Thank you very much to all of the EasyAers out in the crowd, all of our gigabrains. I'm Phil, co-founder of EasyA, and this is Dom, my co-founder, and we're absolutely thrilled to be up on stage here. We love Singapore. We've been here many times before, and we actually spent a couple of our formative years in Hong Kong, which is not too far away, but as you might be able to tell from the accents, we actually were born and raised in a little city called London in the UK, where I know a couple of you are from as well. Brief background on us, and our story. Dom and I are, you might have noticed, brothers. Grew up in London. I did my undergrad at Cambridge University, so I was lucky enough to win a scholarship out there. And Dom did his undergrad at UPenn Wharton. But really, we first got our start in the space in 2013 through Bitcoin mining. So I stumbled across the Bitcoin white paper when I was meant to be studying for my exams, when I was about 16 years old. Went back home that evening, locked myself in my parents' basement, and learned everything that I could possibly learn about the stuff. So I learned about, of course, Bitcoin itself. I learned about all those 3-letter and 4-letter words. Not the typical ones maybe that a teenager is learning about, but I learned about CPUs, PSUs, GPUs, FPGAs, ASICs, pretty much you name it, and just started hooking all of these rigs together in order to build these Bitcoin mining rigs, and then at the same time started learning about all of these different protocols and also coins. So at the time, of course, it was the altcoin season, 2013, 2014, Bitcoin, Primecoin, Litecoin, Feathercoin, a lot of these different ones which were really, really springing up at the time. Went off to university. Dom and I co-founded 2 marketplace startups there, and then ended up becoming an attorney out in New York for a little bit before coming back to co-found EasyA. But yeah, Dom headed off to the US a little bit earlier than I did.
As Phil mentioned, we are brothers and grew up together, of course, in the UK and to an extent internationally as well in Hong Kong and a few other places. But my journey really began after high school, where I went to the US for university. I studied finance as an undergrad at Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania, and then worked in finance as well afterwards at Blackstone and a couple of other really cool places. Was actually one of the first hires at Uber founder Travis Kalanick's new startup, Cloud Kitchens, in New York. So that was a really cool experience. Really gave me a good start to building a company and actually thinking about some of the really pressing challenges that people will face when they actually start a company from zero. And obviously, in today, the work that we do at EasyA, a big part is actually encouraging people to launch their own companies on the blockchain and on the different blockchains we work with. Obviously, we had the big hackathon this weekend together with Ripple in Singapore just before Apex. We had hundreds of developers come in person to build, and obviously a big goal of what we were doing was really encouraging people to build their own companies. So some of that experience is always helpful when we mentor our companies and really encourage them to actually keep on building. And I think that's why we've been able to have as well, in addition to Phil's experience and all of the other developers and amazing people that are in the community, such a big track record of success. In total, the companies that have come out of EasyA are valued at over $3 billion. So that's really cool. We've had a unicorn and other really cool companies that have come out and actually got funded by A16Z, Founders Fund, all the best VCs pretty much. And yeah, we're just excited to tell you more about it today.
Cool. So I think that's a perfect segue into my slide. Today, EasyA has over 1 million developers across the globe. And as Dom mentioned, those startups that they've created are worth over $3 billion. That's coming up to $4 billion, actually. We'll need to update that slide very, very soon. And we work with over 350 of the world's best blockchain clubs. But what really is EasyA? We're going to come on to what really EasyA is in a little bit towards the end of these slides. But for now, you can think of what the EasyA application is as sort of like Duolingo. So you might know the language learning app. It's like that, but for Web3. And so what EasyA is really the onboarding layer for these people, for developers such as yourselves in the audience, to come in. So we partner with all of the top blockchains out there in order to accelerate their adoption, in order to bring them, as Dom touched on earlier. We hosted an incredible hackathon together with our amazing friends at Ripple earlier this weekend. And those projects are now coming out and building. And actually, in the audience, we have one amazing project from Tom, who's building Xeno Finance, that actually started off right at an EasyA hackathon in Hong Kong, built on Ripple with RLUSD, built on the XRP Ledger, and is now going to be presenting tomorrow. So make sure you head over to Tom's talk tomorrow to find out a little bit more about that. So EasyA really is the #1 way that people learn about blockchain. And before I hand over to Dom, this is really a slide with just a couple of the EasyA companies that have come out of hackathons. So you can see that it's a big slide, and this slide could have gone on for a lot longer as well. We have some incredible projects up here. You can actually see the first unicorn that we had, which was Cognition AI. They're valued at $2 billion. Kid called Walden Yan. He was a student at Harvard at the time, decided that he was going to build his dream. He found out exactly what he wanted to build via the EasyA community, via coming to the hackathons we hosted, and via the EasyA app. Dropped out of Harvard, but didn't let his parents know. I think he had a feeling that a lot of people in this audience, especially if you're at the start of this startup journey right now, he had this feeling, well, what if I don't quite make it? What if I've dropped out of Harvard and my parents find out, they're angry with me, and it's all a massive mess and a massive nightmare? So he didn't actually tell his parents. He didn't tell his parents that he dropped out of Harvard, went out to Silicon Valley, continued building out a startup, raised a couple of rounds, and by the time he was raising a couple of $100 million, I believe this would have been in his Series A round, he was talking to a journalist, and he told the journalist, he said, okay, there's just one thing. He said this at the end of the interview. He said, one thing, please don't release the article yet, because I haven't yet told my parents that I've dropped out of Harvard. And the journalist was amazed because his company was about to be valued at $1 billion, and his parents still didn't know. He's had the talk, and his parents aren't too angry yet, but the one thing that they did ask when he announced that his company was worth $1 billion was, when are you going back to Harvard? So on that note, I'll hand over to Dom, who's going to just take us through a little bit about what EasyA hackathons are about.
Cool, thanks, Phil. So Phil just gave us a little bit of an overview of how the hackathons work, some of the success stories that have come out, and I'm going to talk a bit about the app itself and how we actually get people through the funnel. So how they get from learning about the different blockchains we work with, like the XRP Ledger, how we then inspire them to actually show up in person in one of the amazing cities around the world where we host all of our hackathons, and then how we actually encourage them to continue building well beyond the hackathons, because obviously hackathons are just the start, and our goal is really to ensure that projects keep on building well beyond the hackathons, like Tom, who's right there actually in the audience. Started in Hong Kong, like Phil mentioned, built something really cool on the XRP Ledger, allows anyone to make transactions with stablecoins using Apple Pay, and now he's already in some serious talks to actually get it funded, and also obviously is speaking tomorrow. So like Phil said, make sure you check him out. Ultimately, when you look at the hackathons, really how they run is we get a couple hundred people in a space similar to this, oftentimes a little bit bigger than this room, working at desks for 36 hours. I can see a lot of people here actually who are at the hackathon this weekend, which is awesome. And as they'll know, and as anyone who's sort of familiar with the hackathon approach will know, it's really a time for people to actually hunker down and actually spend a couple hours working on an idea they've been passionate about. And then on the second day, we have a pitch day, where we have people from the ecosystem come, judge. We often have VCs as well, people who are able to give out grants to all those teams. And in the past, like we were saying earlier, we've had some super successful stories of projects get funded and actually go live. So Cognition AI is obviously a huge one. People are actually using that project. It's obviously a unicorn valued at, I think, over $2 billion in the latest valuation. So that's super cool. We also have companies building really cool AI agent applications that help you trade. So if any of you are invested in crypto, we have companies that are actually helping you with the help of AI agents balance your portfolio, rebalance it, and make sure that in the background you can be generating high yields without actually actively having to manage your tokens yourselves if you obviously aren't a full-time trader. So really cool projects that are actually making a huge difference. We also have a project that recently launched a wallet on the blockchain too. So That allows anyone to actually store their meme coins, ultimately, and makes it super accessible for anyone to access through Telegram. So that's a team, Rap Me Daddy, right there. They're a team out of USC, actually. So they started as MBAs. They showed up to an EasyA hackathon at Consensus, actually, last year in Austin, and they've been building ever since, and their wallet's now about to go live. So they are really cool team as well to watch, and they'll be helping people actually buy and trade meme coins on the XRP Ledger as well soon. So stay tuned for announcement from them as well. So how does the app actually work? Well, the app is completely free for anyone to use, which is the super cool thing. So anyone can actually right now go onto the App Store, download EasyA on iOS or Android, and ultimately start learning about all the blockchains we work with. So we partner with the best ones, typically major layer ones that we also believe in personally. And ultimately what we do is we take people from a high-level introduction, 101, sort of, what is the XRP Ledger? Why was it created back in the day? And ultimately show them how to actually deploy apps on the blockchain. Obviously, the XRP Ledger doesn't have smart contracts, but for different challenges that we have, we actually allow people to write the smart contracts, deploy them all through the app. So you get a complete end-to-end experience of how to actually build right from your smartphone, which is a complete game changer, actually. And we and our team, our engineering team, actually pioneered the first ever mobile smart contract deployments in history. So definitely check out the app if you're in the audience, don't have it yet. I know many of you do, and pretty much everyone at the hackathon had it. So yeah, if you haven't yet, definitely check out the app, because that's a great place to learn about blockchain. I think one of the things that Phil and I found when we first got into the space is it's not immediately apparent why you'd want to build on different blockchains. Why would you choose the XRP Ledger over Solana? Why would you choose, Stellar over Sui or Aptos, etc.? There's so many cool pieces of tech, but ultimately, why do you choose one over the other? And that's why we created the app. You just swipe across like you would on a dating app, and you can find your perfect match of the blockchains you want to work with. So highly recommend it for anyone. And with respect to the XRP Ledger challenges, they've been hugely successful. So as you can see, the numbers we have up there are absolutely huge. We have over 150,000 people who have started the XRP Ledger challenges already in the app, and a large majority of those have gone right through and actually completed them. So really cool numbers, really big impact that we're having, and all the devs that we have are from really cool institutions all over the world, like Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, etc. So this is a bit of an introduction to the UI, how it all works. You can see that it's super simple. Many people who actually use the app and love it call it Duolingo for blockchain. We are doing what Duolingo did for learning languages for the blockchain. So we're making it super easy for anyone to get started and get stuck in. And that's obviously a huge thing for us. And we have a special challenge that we're announcing, actually, and did announce earlier this week at our little party that we had at the highest rooftop in Singapore, actually, together with Flare Networks. So today, Flare Networks is launching on EasyA, and they're going to be doing some really cool stuff, actually, around XRP-Fi, allowing people to stake their XRP, allowing them to do much more with their XRP than would otherwise be possible. And that's something that we firmly believe in, because since we got into the ecosystem many years ago, we've always heard people asking, I want to do more with my XRP. I hold it, it's great, it's sort of like a store of value to myself, but actually I want to get more involved and I want to actually start doing stuff with it. So we're going to be teaching people all about that together with Flare Networks, and we're going to be hosting a huge hackathon towards the end of this year at Harvard University, where we're going to be getting the best students from all over the world and professional developers actually deploying and really building and getting their hands stuck in with Flare Networks. So really excited about that and what's coming. But we also have one really exciting final thing that we wanted to share with everyone, and that is the EasyA white paper. It's drawing on a lot of the lessons that we've learned over the last couple of years, together with the blockchains we've been working with, and this is really going to take EasyA to the next level. So hand it off to Phil to talk about that.
So the EasyA white paper is extremely exciting. It's something we've worked incredibly hard on. But before I talk a little bit more about what the white paper is about, I need to go back in time. I need to go back to where this all began, which is part of our story, my story into the space, and also about how the space has evolved over time. I talked earlier about how I first got into the space through Bitcoin mining in 2013, but that was a couple of years after this all started with, of course, Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was this absolute revolution. The reason that I was so fascinated by Bitcoin and by the Bitcoin white paper was because of this promise of a form of peer-to-peer electronic money, a form of peer-to-peer electronic cash that allowed people to transact with one another without the need for an intermediary. So I'd say that that is really the beginning of the whole journey that everybody in this room is really on. That was the genesis in more ways than just the Genesis block itself. This was the beginning of all of this and the current blockchain and crypto and Web3 movement that we have today. So Bitcoin was the start. But of course, we're at an XRP Ledger conference, and what happened was people started to realize that Bitcoin is really, really cool, right? But it used a lot of energy. And that's why we have the very famous Bitcoin talk post by Jed McCaleb, one of the original co-founders or co-creators of the XRP Ledger, who said, what if there were a better alternative to Bitcoin? So that was, I'd say, what was maybe a second phase. People started looking at alternatives. The coins that I mentioned earlier that I'd started mining, we're also looking at ways that you could mine without being so wasteful, in the words that Jed put it in his famous Bitcoin talk post. So coins like Primecoin, which try to use that hash power for something more useful than just random calculations. Then we had a Ripple intern, or somebody who's going to work at Ripple, called Vitalik, who realized that actually you could also have something like more expressive, something that allowed you to program that money and program certain things in. And so that was the birth of Ethereum with smart contracts. One of his co-founders then realized that actually Ethereum got a couple of things wrong in terms of scalability. So he joined forces together with Rob Habermeyer, Peter Schaban, and that man was, of course, Gavin Wood, and he created Polkadot. And Polkadot itself had its own issues, and Charles Hoskinson created Cardano, and we have all these new blockchains as well, Sui, Aptos, and the list goes on. I think Dom mentioned a couple earlier as well. There are so many blockchains out there today, and for the developers in our audience who've come to our hackathons, one of the things that has been a consistent struggle is figuring out how do we actually build on all these different blockchains? How do we know which one to deploy onto? And how do we also leverage the different primitives on each blockchain? So that is what has been at the core of what we've been doing. And core of what we have been doing is, of course, our mission is to accelerate the adoption of the world's leading distributed networks. That is what we have always been doing since the very beginning of EasyA and our journey in Web3 and building this space up. And we've been very successful. We talked earlier about how we hit over 1 million users, over 1 million builders, which is absolutely insane. I don't think even we could have imagined that. But we want to go bigger. And our mission is, of course, to bring the world into the space. We want to hit 1 billion. So how do we do that? Well, that's where the EasyA white paper comes in. What we realized was that actually you could break down these networks into something which allowed us to bring developers in much, much more easily, that you could actually talk to a blockchain and build what you wanted to build with a novel intent-based framework. And we have a couple of our research team as well who will be speaking a little bit about it at one of the interoperability panels tomorrow. But what we found was a totally new way of actually bringing together all of these different networks and making it so simple to developers to build that it's almost as simple as writing in a ChatGPT prompt. It's completely different to anything that has been out there before. And we will be opening up to peer review within the next month or so, at which point we will be able to share the full thing. So this is a bit of a teaser, a little bit to whet your appetite into what we're really going to be doing. But you can think of this as being the way that I think a couple of our users have really described EasyA as being sort of like the app store for the blockchains. We help to bring the apps and the builders to build those. At the end of the day, the iPhone is only as valuable as the apps that run on it. I remember when I first got the first ever iPhone, that silver one, it was like the iPhone 2G that it came to be referred to afterwards. It was amazing, but it really only had a calculator app. I think there was a YouTube app, a Maps app, and then also some stupid apps like the Fart app and the beer app that you could pour beer, you could pretend like you're pouring beer into your mouth, but that was the limit, right? And we're still very much in that phase in Web3 at the moment. We're still in the sort of gimmicky phase. We have a couple of really cool use cases. We probably have the calculator app in the form of maybe stable coins. We have maybe the Maps app or whichever apps other they were. Maybe some games as well. So some really, really core apps that build up all this infrastructure, but we need to get to that next level. We're still very much in the first innings of this complete revolution of this new crypto movement, and that's what we're going to be helping to drive forwards with the EasyA white paper. So what you can expect is within the next month or so, this white paper will be in peer review. It will then be available for you to consume as well. And then for the developers down in our audience, this is what you're going to be able to build with coming up very, very soon. We're going to be working on the engineering side. We shared a little bit about this on CoinDesk Live earlier today, but it represents the next phase in building this new future. Dom and I have never been more excited. We've never been more buzzing. And of course, the XRP Ledger is one of the core ecosystems that we're extremely excited to be building this on as well. But I want to end, before we finalize this talk, with, of course, a big, big thank you to everybody in our community who's helped us to get this far, to the builders. We wouldn't be able to get here without you, to all of our supporters who gave us the hurrah as well at the beginning when they got up on stage, to everybody who has supported us on Twitter along in this journey. EasyA is only as valuable as this community. The XRP Ledger itself is only as valuable as the community that builds on it, the users that use it, and who believe in the mission as well. So on that note, Dom and I want to say a big, big thank you to all of you. Thank you so much. We're going to be around afterwards as well, but we're excited to build the future with you. Thank you.
Thank you.